These three things changed the way I think about money and made me financially free and wealthy. So check this out. I'm going to break down income, inflation, and debt. I'm going to flip your brain and make you think about money completely differently. Now, in the next couple videos, I'm going to break down how the system actually works, because if you don't know how money works, and how are you going to get out of the system? Okay? Pre-1907, money was actually attached to reality. Okay? If you traveled around the United States, everybody had their own forms of currency, but that started to change dramatically after 1913. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913, December 23rd, 1913. That is not federal, nor is it reserve. And since 1913, this is really important, make sure you get your pen and paper out, write this down. The US dollar's collapsed 96 to 97%. What took $1 now takes $30 to buy the same thing. So think about that. The purchasing power of your dollar has collapsed. Okay? Think about that. Okay, so that's the first component you need to understand. Now, what did your parents always teach you? Go to school, get a good job, okay? Earn income, trade time for money, okay? Then they tell you to get a 401k. They put you in a 401k, which I'm going to talk about this, okay? Then they teach you to get a good credit score. So your parents were doing the best they could with the resources they had, but this is not our grandparents' and our parents' economy. We're operating on the same rules in a completely different environment. Here's why. Is we are now at 120% debt to income ratio for America. This is not their economy. They weren't at 120% debt to income ratio. Their dollar actually had value, and when they used debt, it actually bought something tangible. Here's what happened, okay? Income is now debt. Why? Because we're at 120% debt to income ratio. So here's the reality. You trade time away from your family, you take time away from your family, and you get paid in someone else's debt. That's wild, right? So your dollar is actually debt. And if we paid off all the debt in America and the world, the actual system would collapse. If you don't stay in debt, the system collapses. Okay? Next, inflation actually robs you, and I'll break all this down, and debt traps you. So here's the way it looks, okay? So they tell you to go get a job, which there's nothing wrong with a job. I'll just explain this, okay? So your parents tell you to get a good job, okay, to create income. But income is actually debt that is losing value consistently over time because of the next component, which is inflation, okay? Inflation is silent taxation. So you can't see it eroding your purchasing power because you see $10,000 in your bank account, but your value is going down because the prices of goods are going up. So you can't see it physically. You see $10,000 in your bank account, and the purchasing power is actually going down. Okay, so that's silent taxation. So you're getting paid in someone else's debt, income. They're silently eroding your purchasing power. You put your money into a 401k, and you can't touch it till you retire. Okay? So you're taking your income, you're putting it in a 401k, they're robbing your purchasing power through inflation, and at about 40 years, so if you work 40 years to retirement, you've lost about half of the purchasing power of your dollar. How do you win? Holy cow. You got a job, you're paid in debt, inflation takes away your purchasing power your lifetime while you're working. Okay, it gets even worse. Because what our parents taught us to do is to get a good credit score, right? So you want to get your good credit score. Why? Because you can get debt. Be a good debtor. Our parents literally taught us to be slaves. That's wild. Think about that. They didn't know what they were doing. It's not their fault. They taught us to be slaves. We get paid in someone else's debt, income, for trading time away from our family. They take away our purchasing power by the time we retire, and we actually are encouraged to monetize debt through a 72-month auto loan. Okay, I'll put an M there just to abbreviate it. Auto loan, a 30-year mortgage. Okay, we got a 30-year mortgage. We got a credit card. Okay, so what's happening now, think about this logically. You have a job, which is debt. The purchasing power is going down. You put your money in a 401k. You go to retire, they tax you, and they've robbed half of your buying power. Debt, You finance a car for 72 months and you're taking away from your future labor. And what happens? This is what you look like. Boom, 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 boom. You got a little chain. This is a big old ball right here. That's what it looks like. So how do we break apart this chain? Okay, let's go back here. We got to understand if income is debt, what we have to do to break this chain is this. We have to transmute our income into cash flow. Okay? Now, why would we do that? Because cash flow doesn't require time. Warren Buffett, if you don't make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. So we need cash flow. So what are some examples of cash flow? Okay, let's talk about that. Cash flow is dividend stocks, side hustles. Now that would require time, but this is an example right here. Okay, dividend stocks. That would be the greatest example. Okay, this is not a good example, not trading time for money. Okay, so we got our income going into cash flow. From our cash flow and our income outside of debts, we want to transmute those into assets. Okay. Why would we move them into assets? Remember, the US dollar's collapsed 96 to 97% because assets over time ideally go up. So you want to pick assets that beat inflation. I don't care what you get into, but pick assets that beat inflation. I did XRP, BTC, excuse me, I have some silver. We have some copper, right? Those are just some examples. I'm not saying you have to invest in those, okay? So now we got income, we're turning it into cash flow. The income and cash flow go into assets that beat inflation. And when the assets beat inflation, we take some profits and we put it into protection. Why would we want to protect it? Because the buying power is being eroded if we go back into the US dollar. I use things like insurance, and I'll explain why. We'll just focus on that category. Insurance, because that creates a family bank. Then I can use leverage. Remember the debt component where our parents taught us? I'll go over this real quick. I use leverage. Now this is the good leverage. This is the stuff we should be teaching our kids to do because of this. Remember, our parents teach us, get a good job, get some income, okay? They don't realize that we're being eroded by the silent taxation. They tell us to get debt taken away from our future labor, and then we are this. They taught us to be trapped, okay? I teach my warriors and my family to take income into cash flow, into assets. We put it into insurance, and then we leverage on this side right here. And guess what we do with leverage? We go back in and we buy more assets and we buy more cash flow. That's how you beat the system, okay? So if this is what it feels like to you, you just have to start chipping away at it. And you chip away at it by, number one, creating a budget, creating some relief there. You take that income and you start to create cash flow, assets, protection, and leverage, and it's what we call capital DR. Okay, C, I invented this, P, L plus DR, and DR is de-risk, 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 because economic cycles look like this. This is what they teach you to invest in, your 401k, and stocks, and crypto as your retirement, and that's what your retirement looks like. Absolute chaos. We pull profits from these, okay? And we create cash flow. We put money into appreciating assets that beat inflation. I don't care what you invest in, just beat inflation. Protection and leverage. And we de-risk, de-risk, de-risk out of these back into here, and we repeat the process. So hopefully that makes sense. I just want to help you guys understand this is where we're at. The American dream became the American trap, and we get rid of it by understanding how money actually works. So let's recap. Okay, your parents taught you to, where are we at here? Parents taught you to trade, get a good job, get income. It's debt, guys. You're getting paid in debt. That sucks. They erode your buying power through inflation, and then your parents teach you to get more debt when you should have debt on the right side only after you've created cash flow, appreciating assets, and protection. So hopefully that helps. So let's turn our income into cash flow. Let's get that cash flow into assets. Let's get some protection. Let's use leverage to make ourselves wealthier. Warriors, rise, get your shit together.